He's brought, the purpose of bringing him before this courthouse is to put him in the ex-ante position, right, in the position he was before the unlawful arrest. As Judge Zinnes said, I think it was this is now the fourth hearing in which she's mentioned it, there was no warrant for his arrest. He was arrested completely without a warrant. Justice Sotomayor also raised that point in her concurrence in the Supreme Court case. If they want to take another run at it and do the process legally and correctly, we will defend that in immigration court. But the whole process was dirty and unlawful to begin with. And so it needs to be wound back, not just from the moment he was put on a plane to El Salvador, but from the moment in which they pulled over his car, right, and put handcuffs on him and took him into custody without any warrant, without any proper revocation of his supervised release. All of that was completely in violation of federal law, and they need to wind it back to before that happened. Then if they want to take a second run at arresting him, at deporting him to some other country, as long as they do it following the law and following due process, they're welcome to do that, and we'll defend him in immigration court.
Simon, can you explain the judge's decision on the motion to dismiss as moot? Can you explain that?
Yeah, the government essentially argued in two motions to dismiss that since the original complaint, according to them, was only asking that he be brought back to the United States, and he's now back in the United States, this whole case is moot, and we're done here. We have no reason to come back to this courthouse. And the judge disagreed with that, and she denied those motions, and so the case continues. And again, as I mentioned, the reason the case continues is that he has not been put back in the position he was in before the first illegal act occurred, and the first illegal act took place in College Park, Maryland, right? Not in South Texas when they put him on an airplane to El Salvador, but in College Park, Maryland, when they pulled over his car and put handcuffs on him without a warrant and without having properly revoked his supervised release.
¿Nos puede decir esta parte en español, por favor?
El gobierno argumentó hoy de que como la querella inicial estaba pidiendo que lo trajeran de nuevo a Estados Unidos y ya él está nuevamente en Estados Unidos, entonces el caso ya básicamente se cumplió y no hay razón para seguir un caso. El caso se puede votar, no tenemos que volver a esta corte ya, porque ya se cumplió lo que tenían que hacer. Pero la jueza no estuvo de acuerdo y lo que ella falló es que el caso sí tiene que seguir. Y lo que tiene que seguir es que el acto ilegal, el primer acto ilegal en el caso de Kilmer Abrego García, no era subirlo a un avión, sino 2 o 3 días antes arrestarlo aquí en Maryland sin una orden judicial y sin haber revocado su orden de supervisión de una manera legal. Entonces, por lo que él no está nuevamente aquí en Maryland, donde él estuvo antes de los actos ilegales del gobierno, el caso sigue vigente.
The Supreme Court gave you a majority opinion at your back. How's that affecting your litigation here?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here, right? The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that the government needs to put him back in the position that he was in before he was unlawfully removed to El Salvador. And 3-justice concurrence, led by Justice Sotomayor, explained very specific federal regulations that includes. It includes the federal law that says you can't be arrested without a warrant unless there's, like hot pursuit and reason to believe the person's going to escape. This is an individual who is on a regular check-in schedule with ICE. They had no need to arrest him without a warrant. Federal regulations require that if they're going to revoke an order of supervision, they have to go through certain legal process, supervised release, they have to go through certain legal processes first. They didn't do that here, right? So all of those things need to be restored. He needs to be restored to his order of supervised release because it was never properly revoked.
So again, what's the status of that withdrawal, removal, that initial status that allowed him to be?
Yeah, he's still very much got an order of withholding of removal to El Salvador. The government concedes that they can't send him to El Salvador again without taking him back before an immigration judge. But the real dispute here is whether they can send him to some random third country without taking him back before an immigration judge. The government says they can. They say they can just put him on a plane, right, and he can figure out where that plane's going to either when it lands or shortly before it takes off and have no opportunity to file protection as to whatever that country is. Our contention is that both the immigration laws and the Constitution require notice and opportunity to be heard. ultimately it's going to be fought out in front of an immigration judge, right? It's not going to be this court that decides whether he can or can't be sent to Mexico or Libya or South Sudan or what have you. But what this court needs to give him is advance notice and some breathing room to be able to file an application for protection.
There were 4 motions today, and forgive me, I can't tell the players without a program. Were they all ruled on?
There were 2 motions to dismiss, the government motions to throw out the case. Both of those were denied. There was our motion to have him be brought back to Maryland. That's what the judge is going to take evidence and testimony on Thursday, and then hopefully we'll decide it either right then and there based on the testimony or shortly thereafter. I am confident she'll decide it before the 16th. And then there's our motion to amend the complaint, which is really just sort of to update the facts since the complaint was filed several months ago. And the judge set forth a briefing schedule on that motion.
And that's the one that includes the treatment he had?
Correct. Yes.
Kyle, you said, Simon, you said in court that you found out that your client was on a plane to El Salvador from ABC.
On a plane that had been brought back from El Salvador.
That he'd been brought back from El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show that the government's been playing games with the judicial process throughout this entire experience, right? I mean, instead of advising the court, they could have filed an under seal filing. They could have, right? They didn't do any of that, right? Then, if it was under seal, you wouldn't have known. I would have known about it. You wouldn't have known about it. But they didn't. Instead, they chose to announce it to the court by means of a press conference at the Department of Justice, right? That not only was the first that I heard about it, it was also the first that Judge Zittis heard about it. Can't imagine she was too pleased with that.
Any final questions, folks?
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here. As we said earlier, the fight continues. We're going to be right back here on Thursday afternoon, y'all. Have a great rest of your day.